Thanks, Mike. This morning on Your Black Business, we are so happy to have a gentleman who is truly an entrepreneur. For the past 20 years, he's worked in financial services, managing offices for big global banking institutions such as Bank of America and the country's largest black-owned bank, United One. He was an adjunct professor at the Urban College of Boston. His passion for financial empowerment through education for Black Americans speaks for itself, and you'll hear that later. He's implemented financial literacy programs and strategies for the YMCA, the Urban League, Junior Achievers, and the Boston Area Church League, just to name a few. He's currently a partner at Las Vegas-based Camino Verde Group, LLC, a privately held real estate investment development and asset management company with its sole focus on multifamily and mixed-use real estate. He also serves as the VP for Nevada Jumpstart, a statewide financial literacy program, and the CEO of GenRise.com, a platform dedicated to the economic empowerment of underserved communities through financial education. His leadership, unparalleled. He's been recognized by the city of Boston, the state of California. He's earned a commercial real estate certification from Cornell University and both graduate and undergraduate degrees in business management from Cambridge College and New England College of Finance, respectively. And, I could go on, but right now, please welcome to the Black Information Network, Mr. Robby Thomas. How you doing, Robby?
Appreciate it. I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
What propelled you growing up to be in the position that you are now? I mean, was money or?
Well, not at all. In fact, I've actually wanted to be an artist, and went to school and brought my portfolio with me to one of my financial advisors and to one of my academic advisors. And they kind of talked me into thinking about what would happen if things didn't go well with the art. And as a result, I was steered into the academic field. But I actually fell into the banking arena accidentally. I just needed a job. And at the end of the day, that opportunity opened up something that really allowed me to see the world through a different pair of lenses. And from that day forward, I've really been entrenched in economic empowerment, working with the community, serving as a community banker, but working with families to try to empower them around financial products, services, but specifically around looking at ways to help people build capacity. And I've really taken to using credit education as a way to do just that.
Let's talk about that. I mean, African Americans, it's pretty obvious that a number of us still are going through some financial lit issues. A lot of us haven't been taught the basics of financial literacy and how money works in America. When you deal with a client who, let's say, may be in their mid-40s and did it all wrong for 40 years of their life and want to change things up for the next 40 years of their life and leave a legacy behind, where do you start, to educate Black people about financial literacy? Where's the foundation start at for you?
Well, it's a really good question. And, everything begins at the home, at home. And we've got to reach into communities and get down to organizations that work with families in particular, whether it be community development organizations, or community service organizations, schools, community centers, churches, everywhere that, you can actually create an opportunity to talk about financial issues, financial literacy. How are you managing your money? How do you raise capital? Business ideas. What do we do when we are trying to expand the business, start a business, get an idea developed, all of these things. But I had the unique opportunity to sit at a desk in a bank, in numerous banks, which, over the past 20 years or so, but sitting down with individuals one-on-one and being able to not just educate them, but to learn about what's going on in their household and some of the challenges that they faced. And so that process has really given me a unique way to address a lot of the questions that I had, and in fact, a lot of questions they had also about meeting the demands of college education, whether it be home ownership, trying to get out of debt, trying to increase their credit scores, any number of issues that they were dealing with, whether it be issues from birth to really to death. And so those are basically the encompassing kinds of issues that they had that I was able to develop expertise around. But I also had to go back to school and go back to graduate school and try to delve into some of the deeper, more intellectual spaces around why there was so much disparity in terms of the income and wealth gap.
So what did you find? Is there a common thread that you find in a lot of African Americans who may not be financially lit?
Well, there's good news and bad news. So the good news is that a lot of this is not attributed to people themselves not being able to be smart enough, or not having enough education, or not being able to work their way out of a situation. This has a lot to do with the reality of historic discriminatory practices. Legally, people were not allowed to purchase homes. They were not allowed to live in places that was redlined. Redlining being one of those illegal practices that banks engaged in, not lending to folks of color. And so those were some of the legal challenges and systematic and systemic challenges that created the dynamic that caused the wealth gap to widen. So yeah, there are some things that was put in front of us that prevented us from really, getting over that barrier. And so how do we deal with that? Understanding it and obviously doing the legal thing. In other words, combating it through law and through policy. But at the same time, it caused a gap in understanding about products like credit and how to get mortgages. And as a result, you ended up with predatory type instruments that really hurt us rather than help us.
The psychological impact of what you just discussed, when you deal with clients on a one-on-one basis, do you look at that aspect, or is it kind of like a to Z? I need you to do this, and if you do that, then we'll do this. I mean, how do you tackle that? Well,
yeah, there are some things that I could say are sort of this common thread about attitudes surrounding money. For example, we know that if you're not comfortable talking about your financial situation, what do you tend to do? Not say anything. If I'm in trouble, for example, I'm not going to bring it to someone's attention, and that person may have the ability to help me. I had to really drag out of people, the issues that might be causing them financial harm. Being able to subject themselves to family members that were taking advantage of them. You talk about. I can go into details where families were, using their kids' social security number to do things, to keep the lights on or things of that nature. We have to break up the mental models that have been shaped over years and years of miseducation in many cases around money and making financial decisions. So a lot of us have not really owned property. And so that's not an area of expertise that we have. Roughly 26 million African Americans still live in a situation where they're in a rental situation. So all of those bridges and those divides need to be bridged through education.
Tell us about GenRise.com, and you're the CEO of this company, a platform dedicated to the economic empowerment of underserved communities through financial education. Yes, sir.
Thanks for the opportunity to share this because, it bridged my interest in banking and sharing knowledge about financial literacy and being able to teach. I've always loved teaching. And so bringing those two pieces together and understanding the underlying challenges that what I saw existed in the communities that I worked in that were dealing with the issues of making financial decisions, that they weren't sophisticated enough to understand, and they were honest enough to say, hey, I'd love to learn a little bit more about this. And so I began doing classes while I was still in the banking industry. And as a result, I saw the need. I've had upwards of, dozens of people come to classes. And then I began to partner with home buying facilitators, and I began to incorporate the credit component, being able to educate people about those issues that may cause them to be denied for a mortgage. And owning a home is really the most rudimentary foundational piece of beginning to build wealth. And if you cannot purchase a home, then you're basically relegated to not being able to build equity. And this is how most wealth is being passed on from generation to generation, is through a residential property. And if you don't have one of those, then obviously you're not passing on any real estate property to the next generation. It perpetuates the wealth gap. It's really important for us to educate and begin to help people understand credit is a really important piece because we don't have a lot of capital. This is an intangible asset that can be leveraged when it comes to trying to build wealth and trying to either build wealth through purchasing a property, opening a business, expanding an existing business, but learning how to leverage it so that you can begin to acquire wealth and particularly income generating wealth that can help you build wealth and a legacy that you can leave for the next generation.
Is it too late? I'm in my 40s. I'm in my 50s. I'm listening to this right now, and I know the mistakes that I've made in the past. I've had a family. I've had kids, college, all that good stuff, and we just scraped to make it by. And now I'm in a position where I can maybe make a change. Is it too late for someone with this kind of profile to make that change?
It is never. The short answer is that it is never too late. One of the biggest misnomers, misunderstandings about people that face obstacles, whether it be bankruptcy, whether it be bad credit, whether it be issues around, having a lot of debt, it is never too late. What's important is that you understand where you are and that there's so many more tools. The biggest difference between when I first started talking about this and doing this to 2020, 2021 is the number of tools that are now available that people can access to help empower them around issues of credit. There's some new laws, for example, that have been introduced that prevent some of the fair reporting some of the fair reporting the ways that they did fair reporting around things like medical bills, for example, or tax liens, all of those kinds of things that normally would hamper a person's credit. Some of those obstacles have been removed by law. And so now people that had those challenges in the past can now say, hey, that's not going to prevent me from having a good credit score. So Experian, another major credit bureau, they have introduced some new tools that can help individuals build credit through using their savings account or using utilities or using rent that you can have reported to the bureau. Those things can actually help you to rebuild or to build or establish credit. So there are a number of new tools that I talk about in my training, which you can access through my website, which is www.genrise.com. Genrise is spelled GEN-RISE. And those tools can definitely help an individual. It doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum of credit. Credit is a very complex, it's a very complex thing to understand. What I try to do is to simplify it with the beginning stages of understanding a credit report or understanding what a credit score is made up of, and then some of the things that you may face. And here's how we deal with each one of these obstacles. So we really try to put it all out there in a concise, comprehensive way to have individuals learn how to do it themselves and not necessarily rely on a professional. And I'm not knocking the professionals, but I think we can do this on our own if we take the time to do so.
Gotcha. And have someone in front of us like yourself that we trust, right? Who looks like
Absolutely.
us, who
it's
understands.
About being trustworthy.
Right. Understands what we've gone through, in our life and really where we want to go. Earlier I was reciting your description and you being part educator, part advocate. I think we've heard the passion there. Let's go into the part investor aspect of your skill set, which is of course large. How important is it for Black Americans to get involved in investing, whether that be through real estate or through stocks and bonds? Explain a little bit about the importance of investing.
I absolutely love this question. One of the most important things that you can ever do in your life is invest. And I think we need to change our lexicon on how we view money. You know, there's only so many things you can do with money. You can invest it, you can make it, earn it, save it, spend it, and invest it. You know, there aren't a lot of other things you can do with money. But once we understand that money does have purpose, and the only way that you're going to be successful with money is understanding that money must be given a purpose, which is why I love this new space that's evolving in the blockchain digital asset world. But I don't want to digress too much there. But the investor side of me, many years ago, sat down at my desk, understanding a lot of the clients that came to the bank and what they did and how they did it. And a lot of those were real estate professionals, people that were building, people that were buying property. And I began to understand because banks do loans and they lend, and they're pretty much financial institutions that build communities. And so I got a good sense up close what people were doing. And a lot of these people were into rental properties. And I began to take note of that. And at some point began to formulate my strategy to begin moving into becoming a real estate investor. And so I started by purchasing a 2-unit building, which I own now for 15 years. I'm in the process of selling it as we speak, by the way. But over time, I learned how to become a landlord, how to become an owner, because I saw the potential of using rental income to help my existing income. So investing is about utilizing your capital to grow capital. We're familiar with the term saving. And so we're taught, as pretty much on the basic level, you need to put aside a little money, from your parents or from relatives that were a little sophisticated. And we're taught how to save, but you're not going to become wealthy by saving. You have to invest. Invest is a particular strategy that really looks at a long-term growth strategy. How do you grow your capital? In other words, how does your money and your capital work for you as opposed to you working for it?
It reminds me of just recently, I've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I'm not here to give a plug, but the point is it can benefit. And it's really benefited me. You know what I'm saying? Because I saw it the wrong way. I had the poor dad. My dad was educated, North Philly, what's up? But, he saw it all wrong. And many people do. And if you read the book, The Rich Dad, he said pretty much exactly what you just said. You're not going to get rich, or you're not going to be wealthy, or you're not going to be where you really want to be just by saving money. You've got to invest. How are your feelings about the stock market? I know African Americans are learning and getting more into the stock game. I have a nephew who's 20 years old who knows more about stocks than I do. This new generation, they're really more on it than we were growing up. What kind of advice would you give a novice who wants to do some investing in the stock market?
Well, I'll say this. There's a lot going on with respect to what's happening in our economy. And what we're talking about, when you talk about investing, you're talking about being able to own stuff. So even if you're looking at trying to develop your stock portfolio, you're basically buying a piece of a company. Now, let's take a step back and look at, who the top 10 companies in the United States are. They're all tech companies.
Right.
From Microsoft to Apple to Facebook and a number of other companies. They don't necessarily create a lot of stuff. What we're witnessing in our economy is the emergence of a new blockchain economy. And I might have jumped over into a segment here, but I'll tell you what's exciting me with what I'm seeing. There is a movement in our economy towards the dematerialization of things. What I mean by that is that companies that are basically creating digital platforms. And so if you're looking for opportunities to invest, what you want to do is to understand where the investment opportunities are emerging.
Gotcha.
Here's the reasoning behind that. When I was teaching management, one of the most important things that I learned in that process is I was teaching a class about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurs practically have great ideas. They all have great ideas. They have great business plans. A lot of them have a great product. But there are companies that survived and some that didn't because of one thing. And it basically came down to the issue of timing. A lot of those companies didn't execute at the right time. And what that equated to was that people lost, what they basically went into. They went into a business that just wasn't the right time for. It was not a bad idea. It just didn't happen at the right time. And the broader market wasn't ready for it. So when you talk about investing, it's similar in that you have to understand the economic climate. You've got to understand what's happening and what's emerging. For example, I'm looking at my Bitcoin portfolio, and Bitcoin is at $21,000 per coin.
Wow.
Now, I remember when it was 3,000, right?
Yep.
And even lower. And so there's a number of things out there that excites me, and I don't give financial advice, but I tell people how to think about what you're doing with the money that you want to invest. You have to understand what you invest in. But the opportunity to invest is so powerful, it's so great today, especially with what I'm seeing in the new landscape with respect to blockchain technologies and the blockchain emerging economy.
And you feel that blockchain for African Americans is the new emerging investment opportunity?
Let me say it this way. Blockchain has the potential to be the wealth gap equalizer, right? And this is something that there's so much potential because there's roughly 4,000 new startup companies trying to create solutions that are basically driven by blockchain technology. We need to seek out what those companies are trying to accomplish, what they're trying to do, and get in as early as we can. Now, there's a bunch of them that may not survive, and just like the dot-com situation, but we're at the equivalent of the dot-com boom, where there was a lot of companies, but out of that dot-com boom was Amazon, right?
Right.
And so there are a lot of companies that will survive, but believe me, there is a lot of potential out there, just as we see Bitcoin being probably the leading technology that's out there that people can identify with. But there's so many others that can really provide some investment opportunities.
And if I can give another quick shameless plug to Tavonia Evans and her Guap Coin, which is a Black-owned cryptocurrency company. She was on the Black Information Network back in 2020. I'm going to have to try to bring her back on this show very soon. She's a certified Bitcoin professional and cryptocurrency evangelist. She's a mom and big investor in women and Black-owned businesses. She is so knowledgeable about this cryptocurrency game, and I know she wants Guap Coin to be that blockchain company that can save the African-American economy. We're going to have to bring you back, Robby, because, man, I could go on for another hour, talking to you about financial literacy and all the information and knowledge you have. And you're so passionate about making sure that those who want the information can get it. Can you give me information or give our listeners information again about how they can reach you online, your email address, whatever you'd like to do to try to throw it out there so folks can contact you?
Sure. I'm going to give you the website right now. We're promoting the credit class. You'll probably see that the minute you get to the website, which is www.genrise.com. And Genrise is GEN-RISE.com. And I'll give you my email, which is rthomas@genrise, GEN-RISE.com. Shoot me an email if you're interested. We're looking for potential partners to share the credit program with people that work with clients that need to understand credit education, that may be looking to purchase homes or to just understand credit a lot better. Would love to partner with you and find ways to bring value to your program.
Awesome. Real quick, I just have one question. What's the worst client that you ever had, particularly, let's say, with credit scores and just education? And how did you take that person and flip them into being a successful business person?
A lot of people come to me really almost in tears, embarrassed. A lot of them, just really ashamed because credit kind of makes you feel bad about yourself.
Right.
And the one thing I say to folks is that, that's not a reflection of who you are. It's a situation that might have occurred, and it's almost a snapshot of something that might have occurred in the past. And there are ways that we can help you address those issues. But I did have a young man basically came to me because his identity was stolen, and to the tune of someone actually took out a loan in his name, filed taxes in his name, and they had a $98,000 loan on his credit report that they attributed to him. And so he came to me because he was referred by someone that I've known for a while. And we sat down and, I counseled him. I did a overview of what was going on and, from writing letters and giving him what we call a credit action plan to execute so that, he can address some of those concerns. And, he called me, I think it might have been maybe 90 days later or so that, he was pretty much all set. He got the stuff off of his credit and he was ready to purchase his home. And so that was a pretty extreme situation to have a loan that was almost $100,000 that was on your credit report and having no idea how to deal with that. And there are a lot of instances where people have items on their report and they have no idea how to deal with it. The important thing is to try to understand what's hurting you, what's helping you, and focus on what's hurting you. And there are ways to do that. My class gives you some insight on how that can be done. And obviously, if you do it, by the way, there is a fee for the class. The class is $20. But it's certainly an investment in not only just a class that you could say, well, yeah, I took this class, but it's an education that can be passed on to your family members and certainly could impact you intergenerationally.
That's right. Hey, for 2021, what kind of advice would you give someone who wants to take their horrible credit scores and their horrible mindset about money and flipping it in 2021? What kind of advice would you give that person?
Well, first things first, man. I always love the end of the year because I like doing plans for the following year. I've always done that, right? Even if it's a continuation of the previous year. But I would say, first of all, if you're concerned about credit, take the class. Number one, take the class because the class delves into a little bit more deeper than just, what a credit score is. The truth of the matter is a person has over 60 or so credit scores. We talk about credit models and all that kind of stuff. But the important thing is to set some boundaries, set some goals about what you want to accomplish. And if you don't have the kind of credit you want, that's going to prevent you from achieving some of the other goals.
Right.
Because if you're talking financial goals, if you don't have good credit, that should be number one, right? Because you can't leverage an asset that you can't use. And having good credit is a intangible asset. You might not be able to, you can take it to the bank and leverage it, and that will give you some opportunities to grow a real estate portfolio. And we didn't tell you a little bit about what happened once I decided on, really shifting. I have now become a partner in a real estate firm, and own several multifamily properties. And so in getting ready to do some more deals. So you go from having an idea to beginning to execute, and it's never too late. The important thing is that we must start the process, create the roadmap, which, again, we give you a pretty easy guide to doing that. And once you got the roadmap, you just begin to execute.
2020 was a pretty tough year for Black businesses. It was just a tough year, period. But, in particular, when we're talking about Black businesses that have gone under, the numbers are astronomical. We're now in 2021. What are some good pieces of advice that you could give a Black business owner who may be in debt now and wondering how they can manage whatever they have to come out of this pandemic in 2021 without any credit issues?
Well, it's a really good question. And, there's so much that, has to be sort of processed as, we look at and sum up what happened in 2020. Obviously, we prepare for taxes, right? Because the result of what happened in 2020 ultimately means that you have to file taxes. You have to ensure that you do a pretty good accounting of what took place financially. But for a lot of businesses that have taken losses, I think it's really important to find out where the resources are. And I know that the federal government has, tried to put a lot of stimulus legislation together to really help smaller businesses. And in fact, if you have the opportunity to tap into those types of resources, it's really important to do that. In addition to that, I think it's a matter of sitting down and determining how do you begin to look at your business. Is it something that you can move forward with, or is it something that we need to pivot on, whether it means retooling your business to do a different type of service? One of the things that we have to look at is look at the landscape, see where we are, see what's happening in the landscape. What are the growth trajectories that maybe you can tweak your business to take advantage of? I know that the digital space or the AI space, there are a lot of businesses that are brick and mortar that have gone out of business. Brick and mortar may not be the thing to jump off with at the moment. So all of those things really need to come together in a way. And then finally, a lot of us may have fallen behind with paying bills, and that means your credit is going to be impacted. So now how do you begin to look at getting that back on track so that you can leverage it again as an entrepreneur to take advantage of some of the new opportunities that you may be looking at on the horizon?
Let's go into some more investment information. I know we touched on a lot earlier. 2021, when it comes to the housing situation here, is it a good time to maybe invest in buying a home? Is this the right time? Because the prices are pretty high.
They obviously are. And, it depends on where you are. If you're a individual with a family that has a job and you're looking to build wealth, obviously getting a piece of real estate makes a lot of sense, right? You stabilize your monthly payment, your housing payment, because a mortgage doesn't change. If you get the correct mortgage, 30-year, 20-year fixed, it doesn't fluctuate. If you're a renter, every month or every year, the landlord could possibly raise your rent. So,
and I hate to interrupt you, but will you be paying more for a house now? I think the average house in America is about $340,000.
You may be, but You certainly may be. It depends on where you are, right? So one of the things you would do if you're purchasing a home is to determine what is affordable for you. In other words, you're not buying more house than you can afford. So even though prices may be a little higher than they were, say, 5 years ago, what are the chances are the houses will be the same price 5 years from now, right? So they're going to be more expensive in the future. So buying a house today versus in the future, you're going to save money, right? You're saving money on a number of different fronts in terms of the appreciation of the value. But you also, if you buy today, you're also going to, your appreciation will grow. In other words, you're going to be a little bit wealthier 5 years from now as opposed to pushing it off for a future time. But the point here is if you are a homeowner, you're able to grow wealth. And if you are a renter, there's nothing absolutely wrong with that. I think it's a matter of learning how to save money and be able to invest in something that will build value over time. And one of the primary ways families build wealth is through buying real estate. And usually that starts with your first home.
Great. Let's circle back around to the credit thing real quick. What's your best advice for those who may be challenged and trying to improve their credit in 2021, particularly in this environment that we're in now?
Well, I share a lot of those insights with individuals on my website, which is www.genrise.com, and Genrise is GEN-RISE.com. But the first thing is that you want to negotiate with your creditors. Okay, if you've fallen behind for whatever reason, people understand what just happened is a once in a lifetime situation. COVID, no one could have foreseen the situation that came about as a result of COVID. Not the government, not companies, and many of whom have gone out of business. So reach out to your creditors and talk about the possibility of negotiating payments, if that is a possibility. If that is not possible, then you want to look at consolidation loans, things that may be able to put everything together and finance a short-term or a loan that gives you the ability to put everything together and make one payment.
What if I lost my job and, I have another job, but I'm not making enough money and I'm barely surviving? I've got to take care of my family,
As a last resort, you can reach out to a credit counseling agency. And there are pros and cons about those. They shouldn't be a company that charges you. They should be accredited and work out a situation where they have the ability to negotiate directly with your creditors to either decrease the loan amount by decreasing the rates, by getting the interest sort of discounted. And they're also able to consolidate some things for you. In other words, you pay them whatever you could, and they in turn make the payments directly to those creditors. So there are different ways that you can go about this. The point is, you have to be proactive. You must be proactive. Don't sit around and wait for the last minute for this to really become a crisis. You want to make sure you become as proactive as you possibly can. And another point here is, in terms of your credit, there are several different avenues that you can choose or you can go to help rebuild credit, because, credit is composed or comprised of two different things: good stuff and bad stuff. And if you have bad stuff on your credit, there's some things you can do about it, but you can also begin to make sure you take care of the good stuff. So keep the good stuff going and make sure that you don't drop the ball there while you're dealing with the bad stuff.
Getting pretty tight on time. What are your thoughts about credit repair companies?
There are reputable credit repair companies, but they're very, very few. And so it's very important. I am of the school of thought that you should be able to understand credit to the point where you should be able to do it on your own. You should be able to handle your credit situation on your own. It is not that difficult if you will invest the time. I have created a credit rebuilding course that's only $20, and you can download it. You can basically go to my website and learn about that. And it basically walks you through the entire credit process, consumer credit, how to rebuild. It goes through things like credit scores, and it shows you several different ways to rebuild credit.
Wow. Let's get the website one more time.
Website is www.genrise.com, and Genrise is GEN-RISE.
You're listening to Your Black Business on the Black Information Network.